So I know we have 30 minutes. I have so much content that I want to share, but I'm not going to share that much, okay? So normally when I give presentations, I'm normally in mentoring mode. The way I work is I don't like giving talks per se. I like giving a little bit of content and then working with the crowd. But I think you guys are here today to hear me talk a little bit about lean startup and about scaling. I'm going to focus more on lean startup, less about scaling. That's number one. And I'll get to that later about why. And I know you guys want to go see Al Gore and Charlize Theron later. So thanks for coming here. Paperclip, Startup Campus. What we do, startup programs in a workspace. Okay, I'm going to get into that more. This is the problem that we're trying to solve for most startups. I would argue for most founders. I would argue for anybody wanting to launch anything in life. All right? 9 out of 10 startups fail. Why is that? It's a high failure rate. Okay? So this is the problem that we're trying to solve. And why are we trying to solve this problem is because, so FYI, I am not an academic. Okay, I'm an entrepreneur. I know this in this space, we're hearing a lot of academics, we're hearing a lot of researchers, a lot of government politicians. So and there are tons of entrepreneurs here as well. But my story is about the entrepreneurship journey that was very difficult, very hard, and tons of failures basically that kind of defined after it became stable why I set up Paperclip. And essentially Paperclip's very simple. How do I get founders to plan B faster? Because plan A always never works. And quickly, the conclusion that I came to after 4 years, we've worked with over 1,600 founders. And I trained with this guy who developed the lean startup process that was essentially the first process ever to talk about commercializing early stage innovation. So while we have MBAs for corporates, there was no curriculum for startups. So as an entrepreneur coming from Hong Kong, who had great ideas, I had no support. I didn't know where to get help. I didn't know how to get help. And then all the time we're hearing, so this is back in the 80s, 90s, 80s, okay, I'm lying, 80s. But you know, all the time we're hearing about the great entrepreneurs being launched out of the US market and then typically Silicon Valley, okay? Why? I even have this letter that I wrote to Michael Dell back in 96, 97. But how did you do it? You were in a dorm room, and then 2 years later, you're like in a public company with like corporate clients. How does that happen? You know? And of course, he never wrote back. But essentially, what drove me was trying to solve this problem about there are all these entrepreneurs who want to solve problems, and why does Silicon Valley have a monopoly on this? All right? So my research took me to, I said I'm not an academic, so when I say my research, I wasn't researching. My observations took me to yoga classes, CrossFits, you know, training for a marathon. It's like people can learn skills. You hear people at 40, 50, 60 doing triathlons. You know, how does that happen? Then you figure out that you can't just read a book. You can't just listen to a podcast and it's all solved. What happens is you expect to follow a program, actually. You want to train, of course, you got to work hard. Action, regular, you got to observe and measure. So this measurement part, I get a lot of entrepreneurs who tell me, how do you measure progress? And we'll talk about that. You work with trainers, coaches, and the word for the business world are mentors. We've got different types of mentors. And then you expect to improve over time, okay? The other part is today's age, we love to work in a community. So I originally started my idea as a co-work space, but it was a co-work space with mentoring. So it was a mentoring-focused co-work space. And then I developed into organized mentoring that you'll see more. But essentially, when you're building a startup, we use this word journey and we forget that. Our vocabulary for early stage entrepreneurs needs to be upgraded. So the way I call it is that it's a journey of discovery with the goal to validate everything. When I say everything, you're also validating yourself. It's a very personal journey as well. And essentially to find out, you don't know what you don't know. We'll talk more about that. So we've come up with all this wonderful stuff. So while we have co-work spaces, we've got content, we've got these, our fitness classes for entrepreneurs are what we call startup mentoring intensives. 2 hours, group mentoring sessions, a little bit of content, and we're working on your ideas. And then, of course, mentoring clinics. And then validators is my take on a different version of an accelerator, and that's for another day. But essentially, we're talking about validating innovation. If I could, I'd say validating entrepreneurs. And so we've done tons of founders, tons of events. So this is over the last 4 years. So coming back to this slide, let's not forget why we're here again. But let's come back to a little bit of a definition. Okay? My definition of an entrepreneur. Or more like characteristics. What do we need to have, or what do we need to develop? Okay, this is not, of course, comprehensive, but more or less. What do we need to develop personally for ourselves? You know, there's a lot of, I call it unbalanced parts, of course, because through this journey, and we'll talk about this journey, stubbornness, naive, of course we want to be problem solvers, but we're also dreamers, and we're extremely curious. Okay? Perseverance, absolutely, and ambition. Personally, I look for ambition when I'm mentoring and working with founders, especially the ones that I'm investing in. And I use this word, changing your story. And again, that's for another day, but it's a very personal journey, basically. So I love to say this, don't be this guy or girl, but don't be this person. Solutions looking for a problem. Solutions looking for a problem. Invention. You guys have seen all these funny pictures on the internet, a guy with a rubber band with a mobile phone on his ear, or a hat with a toilet paper, you know, so he can blow his nose, etc., etc. Okay? Solutions looking for problems. The world that I work in doesn't involve inventions. We involve commercialization. So this is where the academic part is very different from the commercialization part. And there's a big opportunity here, and very few people are doing this, marrying an entrepreneurial process with research. Okay? But essentially, that's how everybody starts, solutions looking for problems. Now, this slide, we can pause for a bit. I'm going to let you guys take this in for about a couple of seconds. But the psychology of trying to solve a problem, all right? And by the way, we love our graphic design, and we love making beautiful slides that are simple, okay? So we always start off one morning, and we say, I can change the world. I'm going to sell clean air in China. You know, I'm going to bring an iceberg into Dubai, okay? I like to call that the uninformed optimism phase. Then we get right here. I've never had a slide this big. I love it. Right here, informed pessimism stage, guys. Yeah. So this is where the 9 out of 10 fails. Right here. Right here. You know, if we just don't carry on anymore with this talk, we can just end the slide. You know, this is enough to walk away with. But the informed pessimism stage, where nobody loves my idea. Who did you test your idea with? My mom said it was amazing. My girlfriend said it was amazing. Yeah, those are the two people you never ask. Okay? It's like the ugly baby syndrome. A mother will never say her baby's ugly. Okay? It's an example, guys. Okay? I'm not talking about ugly babies here. But the point here is, how are we testing the market? What are we doing in this phase? But we call it informed pessimism because at least you have some research. And this was me. This is where all the failures happen. 9 out of 10 fail here. But you get to the informed optimism phase. There is a term for this in business school language, strategy, called crossing the chasm, right here. And my goal, the problem I'm trying to solve is shortening this part. How to get to plan B faster without the pain. And we're living in an amazing time today because we have supercomputers in our pocket. And everybody today has access to a market, which never happened before. Another slide. Okay, I get a little philosophical here because it's very important to understand where I'm coming from. We start off with this in life. This applies to life, but I tell all entrepreneurs this. I care about two things. I care about why you're doing this, your purpose, and then impact, accelerating your impact. I know what I know, knowledge. I know what I don't know. We study, we figure out stuff. Okay, I don't know about blockchain. Let me go learn about it. I don't know what I know, that's experience. For me to sit here in front of you guys, 6 years ago to think about this, I'd be like, impossible. Why am I here? I'd never be able to. I don't have anything to share. I have a lot to share. And this is the part where entrepreneurs live, and this is where I live. I don't know what I don't know. It's about humbleness. It's about this journey of search. I also call journey of discovery. Whoa, what's going on here? Okay, this is heavy, but let's go. Search. So this is where startups work. This world that they live in, where they need the mentors and the support and the incubators and the seed funding. They're trying to reduce uncertainty, ultimately. That's what they're trying to do, until they get to a phase where they're able to have a validated business model and they want to get to grow or scale, depending on their ambitions. It doesn't matter. Okay, there's no judgment there. But I work in this area today, which isn't very profitable. But I work here because I'm passionate about it, okay? And this guy keeps me sane, because if you ask my wife here, how do I operate? I overcomplicate stuff, but that's what entrepreneurs do, because we think about the solution all the time. We're not trying to define the problem. So this is leadership right here. There's another word I'm introducing. This is leadership right here. Can't explain it simply, you don't understand it well enough. So let's do some basics. What is a company? I'm introducing the business model canvas here. And we'll talk about that. But essentially, creating, capturing, and delivering value. Execution. If Starbucks wants to go open in another country or a new location, they're playing off a playbook. Okay, they hire MBAs, there's skills that are needed, everything's validated, we know what they're doing, they know how much money that they're going to make, and they're optimizing. Okay? Mapping out the business model here. So what is a startup? What is a startup? I trained with this guy, Steve Blank. He's the guy that came up with the idea of Lean Startup. And then there's students like Eric Ries who took it famous, and he figured out how to make money from it by working with corporates. And then there's Alex Osterwalder, the guy who came up with the canvases, all right? But essentially, this is the big idea. Startups are not smaller versions of large companies. We're approaching startups like large companies, which is why they're failing also most of the time. It's a big insight, guys. And a more advanced term is, a startup is a temporary organization formed to search, that's the discovery journey, for a repeatable and scalable business model. Repeatable and scalable business model. Can I just ask quickly, what word is missing from this? What word might be missing from this? Anybody? Sorry? Exactly, profitable. Is Snapchat profitable? Right. Is Twitter profitable? Right. So the magic of Silicon Valley and their PR machine is that, you know, they are number one, rah-rah, but they have the IPO market. So that's an exit strategy, which is a revenue model. Okay? So for the non-Silicon Valley startups and the people who work in the areas of the world that I live in, I add the word profitable. But Steve's blank quote did not have profitable in it. Okay? Alibaba basically had to be profitable before they could even list on the IPO market. And they are massive, but nobody recognizes them. And this is the other idea. Why we have the canvases, and this isn't about the business model canvas today, but basically no business plan survives first contact with customers. This is the big insight. We keep talking about our solution. We keep talking about a solution looking for a problem. We keep wondering why nobody's buying my magical product. Actually, it doesn't matter, because actually it's all about the customers, guys. That's the big insight with respect to the Lean Startup process. We map out the canvases, but don't worry about that. But essentially, the conclusion here is companies execute, startups search. Lean Startup. Now we get to the topic. 15 minutes in, all right? Everybody is a planner until they get punched in the face. Famous Mike Tyson quote. If you're old like me, you guys will remember Arsenio Hall show. This is where he was asked, well, he was famous for his 3-second knockouts. He's like, so what's your plan? He just laughed and he said, everyone has a plan until they get punched in the face. This is that informed pessimism phase, way back. This is that discovery. And actually, startups want to get punched in the face, because the more punches they get, it's the more learning they get, okay? And we build this ecosystem now to support startups. We call them incubators. But look, the ecosystems look very messed up, and that's another discussion again. But they're not designed to support the startups. So when people tell me, what are you doing with the incubator? I said, I'm looking for a return on the entrepreneur, not a return on the investment. I'm looking for a return on the entrepreneur. Because if this guy will fail on the first idea, they will eventually succeed on the second or third one, as long as they follow a process. Okay? Lean Startup, to map it out, we've got the idea. We hypothesize a business model on a canvas. So we call them assumptions, guesses. We go out of the building. So the big idea behind Lean Startup is this customer development process that we'll talk about. But also, because of this age that we live in, we can develop technology solutions easy. Now it's almost free to develop a website and test it. Google AdWords and go advertise it, and go find customers and see if they'll come to your site and see what they say. Research. I told you it can be measurable. So we are actually becoming experimenters, but from a business speak point of view. By the way, if anybody wants the slides later, there's a contact information there and you can ping me. All right, happy to share them. But no, you're happy to take photos as well, so don't worry about that. So again, mapping it out a little different. What do we do with the early stage? So keep in mind, we're talking about early stage innovation. I'm not talking about scaling. Scaling, as far as I'm concerned, falls in the execution phase, and there's a lot of people that know about scaling. Even those startups, where they struggle is finding the right mentors to help them on their scaling journey. And so I don't worry about that too much, because when you're working with the right people, the right investors, the right mentors, and with LinkedIn, et cetera, you're able to get access to good people. But what we look for is problem, solution fit, product market fit. Don't worry about that. And then we get to the business model fit. This can take 3 years, 5 years, 6 years, 8 years. So it's a journey. We want to get out of the building because there are no facts inside. Working on a business plan, the traditional way to work on a business plan is you're sitting on your laptop for 3 months, typing on a 60-page report, giving it to a couple of people to read. No conversation with a customer. What I want to see with the guys that I invest with, so forget the people that I train, because training, and then it depends on them to go ahead and do what they want to do. But ultimately, the people that I invest in, I want them to do almost 10 to 20 interviews a week in the beginning stages. What we're doing is that we're building this rich description of the problem, this rich description of what we don't know. So it's totally experiential, guys. Totally experiential, this. Getting out of the building, there's a formal methodology. This is the customer development process. Minimum viable product and pivot. So this is a very important insight. We don't need to build a perfect product today. Kickstarter, for example. Crowdfunding, for example. People are launching ideas. Now you've got the ICO, which is a whole different story now. But people are launching ideas on the hope of a product being ready that they're willing to fund. Okay? But basically, we want to test prototypes with the market. Let's not worry too much about that. But this is the customer development process, which is at the heart of Lean Startup. So I introduced the canvases. There's actually another canvas called the value proposition canvas, which is a plug-in to the business model canvas. But essentially what we're doing is that we're discovering who our customers are, and we go validate these customers, because ultimately you want to be paying customers. That is not always the case. Instagram did not have a paying customer, but Facebook bought them because they were a great feature for their platform. There are other ways to play this game, but you really need to understand the industry. Okay? Other ways to play this game, but you have to understand the industry. But essentially, this is where the search process happens. Once you figure out who the customer is, why the customer is, what their deepest pain points are they willing to pay, you go into building them out. You go into company building. You go into scaling, if you like. Okay? This is not the trajectory of every business, because, and we'll talk about that, actually. We'll talk about that. We have time. I spent some time on why mentors. People struggle to ask for help. People struggle that they don't know that they can get help. So there's two challenges here. Because you don't know what you don't know. A mentor at one level can help you see the future as a trajectory. A great mentor can challenge you to look around corners. Okay? But this is really at the heart. When somebody asks me, how do you know a good mentor? I say, are they giving you information or are they asking you questions? I want to know how many questions they're asking you. I don't care about their answers so much, because anybody who's over 35 is able to help you. All right? That's why I kind of group mentors into different categories. You've got coaches, you've got advisors, and then you've got mentors. Okay? You want to be surrounding yourself with a combination of these. I actually have 5 people I talk to today. All right? There's nothing wrong with me. It's because when you're working in this innovation space that's moving so much, And there's so many things I don't know, especially about the investment phase. I don't know so much about the scaling phase, you know? So I'm specializing in the early stage idea phase. So that's where I can step in and help founders. And we always want to ask why. Why? Well, because we're so busy in the execution. We always want to do. We always want to do. We'll have some time to ask questions. I know I'm just conscious of time. So why business models fail? Who knows the number one reason why business models fail? Okay, leadership. What else? Sorry? Sure, bad leadership, assuming that. If they fail in good leadership, we're in trouble too. Sorry? There's no access to market? Yeah, so you didn't get the customer insight, right? So you don't know your market. Sorry? Wrong assumptions? Okay. But remember, we're testing assumptions. So that's okay. Refusal to pivot. Funding. We'll talk about that one. I'll come back to that. Treasury management? So you make sales, but maybe you don't charge. Sure, so let's say poor execution. Okay? Business modeling, maybe your business model is not well designed. Okay, so the business model doesn't work. Okay? So the number one reason why business models fail, solving a problem no one cares about. Now we're talking about the startup phase, okay? Startup phase. So coming back to the funding question, if you talk to so there's studies been done. Startups who haven't raised funding, the number one reason why they fail is solving a problem nobody cares about. Startups who've raised funding, the number one reason they will fail is because they've run out of funding. The second problem is solving a problem no one cares about. So there's that challenge, guys. We always think we want to raise money. It's the wrong question. I'm saying, what have you validated? Who's your customer? What problem are you solving? Why are you doing this? You know? I ask these questions, challenge the entrepreneurs. If they don't care to hear me, they don't belong within my system, which is great. I've automatically filtered them. It's awesome. Number two, so this is getting here to that flawed business model part, okay? Flawed business model. Things don't work, which is okay, guys. Change in the macro environment. Oil prices crash. Trump doesn't let you back into America, okay? Macro environment, out of your control, can't help it, okay? Poor execution as well, okay? Leadership. Mentors, guys. So all of this can help. Language of innovation, let's not worry too much about that. So here, I'm introducing another concept again, guys, but this is heavier, but those, again, who've built businesses will understand this faster. But essentially, startups work in this area, early market. That's the value proposition canvas, guys, or part of it, okay? Startups work in this area, and there's this language, especially in technology, called crossing the chasm. This is where VC funding is needed, because you need to grow. You need to grow, because ultimately, when you switch on the fee switch in your company, if you're giving business models, or your product for free, or the freemium model, you want to get users. Ultimately, you switch it on. You make $1 from 100 million people. You're making 100 million revenue. Okay, along those lines. Anyway, very simplistic. But this is where a lot of companies fail, and this is where VCs do a good job of taking care of that part of the market. And then ultimately, what's happening with the market, the pragmatists, conservatives, skeptics, don't worry about so much, but basically you have a mainstream market once you hit here. Here now, your Starbucks, your Zara, your Uniqlo, your Lululemon, okay? Your McDonald's. You're already here. You know the market, established. You execute, okay? In closing, what we're going to start talking about is, I tell startups here, success looks so easy for people. Behind every success, trust me, there's 9 out of 10 arrows coming down in red over here. But let's not be so pessimistic today, all right? But essentially, those that are persevering will succeed with the pivoting, with the assumptions, with the guesses, with the market research. And then, of course, this is what we have to tell all entrepreneurs today. The thing that I'm observing today and since the last 4 years was, I always thought that it was such a great time to be an entrepreneur. It is, by the way. Statistics I've been hearing out of the US market is that apparently there are less people starting businesses than ever before, by the way. That's really interesting. But I know the opposite is true for this part of the world onwards, going east, okay? But entrepreneurship is about chaos, but it's about managing that chaos. So it's a very personal journey because you're going to learn a lot about yourself and building your leadership style while you're trying to solve this problem and trying to figure out nobody cares. So I always tell people, I mentored a startup yesterday, you know, I've got this board and they're telling me what to do, and I could just see from his face, they're pushing him away from his vision. There's that gap. You've got to figure out what your story is. This is your journey. So mentors, you have to be careful here. Look, if you need financial advice, you go to a financial advisor or somebody legal, and they will tell you what to do. It's great. Okay, of course, you want the good ones who will understand and blah, 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 but otherwise, you have to shape this journey in the way that you want it to play out as you learn about yourself. Somebody may give you answers or questions or advice, but it's your decision at the end of the day. This is an example. We don't need to go through these examples today. We have a couple of minutes if you guys have questions. But these are some of the books that have influenced me. So I put his book up. This is Lean Startup from, well, the original manifesto from Steve Blank. But it's like reading an engineering instruction manual. But I put it up because it's Steve Blank's book. This is the best one because it's all pictures. So I love it. It's easy. It's all pictures. And it incorporates what he does. In fact, these guys all work together. These two are amazing strategy books for anybody, and they can always be reviewed. Always be reviewed. These two are amazing strategy books. Again, Eric Ries, because he's worked with him, I haven't read that book. I think it's okay, but it's almost just talking about his ideas. This is interesting if you're a corporate. So I also do corporate, I don't want to use the word consulting, but I advise. I advise corporates on the lean startup process, but the corporate's approach to lean startup is another area. It's got its own set of challenges, put it that way, okay? And lean customer development will just help you on the customer development process. But guys, there are tons of free links on the internet. Steve Blank talks about all this stuff. The stuff that I have done, all the slides that I've made are my slides, but they're taken out from, it's on these shoulders that I stand, and all this content. Okay, this is not really mine. My insight is just my talk to you. And if you guys want to connect, okay, reach out. But that's it. Are there any questions? I'm getting confused with the camera hands coming up versus question hands. So. Going once? All right, thank you so much. Oh, whoa, 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 right at the end. Let's go.
Yeah, it's an academy. So can you give us a little bit more insight about what's your process? So if you're taking on somebody and mentoring, or what is your process that you would follow?
This is where I wish you'd have asked that question way back early, because now I got to go back through all the slides. It's right here. I'll explain. The process is here. So we call ourselves a campus now, okay? I stayed away from this language of academy because I didn't want to be known as an academic. People thought they were coming to study. And then I was telling them, where are your ideas? Where are the projects that you're working on? They're like, no, we're coming here to listen to a talk. This is about action. Really, this is about action. So what do we do here? Okay, so this is me with Citibank. This is the incubators in Hong Kong. This is me in my space, all right? I know it's all pictures of me. I've only got like 4 other mentors. I haven't scaled that yet, okay? This is 1,600 founders that I've been experimenting with. But essentially, we have some content that we take out. So this can be a 40-minute, hour-and-a-half talk. We're working on examples, okay? You don't have to bring your ideas. But this is where I have the most fun. I'm working with entrepreneurs. So this is 2-hour sessions that we've developed. What I foresee happening in my campuses, if I can expand in Hong Kong and globally, is like you're going to a yoga studio. You've got the different classes going on during the day. People can come and attend what they want. It's not that have you attended the first one, you can't do the second one. No, not at all. It's all relevant. But that's how it works. But with respect to the incubator, heavy emphasis on customer development, on interviews. So when we give money, then there's that process that they've got to come back with. And that's where we analyze. Thank you. Good question. Gentlemen?
Anybody else?
Lady?
Sorry, you might have already covered this, but do you do any of your mentorship virtually, and have you explored that yet?
I haven't. You know,
we would love to talk to you then after.
Sure, but this group setting, when we do it here, is extremely powerful because You know, again, it's not really also about the mentor. I'm almost facilitating. You know, when you get this group of amazing people together, and by the way, interesting statistic, I'm all about inclusion as well, 60 to 70% of the people who come are female. And it's interesting because clearly they're looking for help, they're unable to find help. So anyway, that's just an interesting thing that I've observed. But in this group setting, we have people, so in middle, we'll stop as we're working on the canvases for the different people, and we'll do talking points in between, 2 or 3 talking points to share examples. So you have to be open to share. But you've got the other founders supporting the mentors. They're learning how to mentor. They're learning leadership, which is really exciting. So that's why. Anyway, thank you.